Penelope Grant pushed open the heavy glass door of the elite city tennis academy, the whisper-hush sound of her trainers on the polished floors the only noise marking her entrance. She wore a sweat-soaked tank top and shorts, her hair still damp and clinging to her neck from an early morning training session. An oversized gym bag hung from her shoulder, and she looked more like a player fresh from a grueling workout than someone about to step into a pristine, prestigious sports training facility. The academy was a hub of frenzied yet organized activity. Junior players in crisp white uniforms lined the courts, practicing powerful forehands under the watchful eyes of experienced coaches. Lush greenery framed the edges of the courts, and the air thrummed with the subdued buzz of focus and the sweet sound of rackets meeting balls. Penelope drew a few sideways glances from staff and students alike, her attire standing out against the immaculate, polished atmosphere that surrounded her. Damon, a brash assistant coach notorious for his overly assertive demeanor, spotted her across the court. His eyes narrowed with instant judgment. Striding over with an air of casual authority, he didn't bother with formalities. "Hey, new girl," he barked loud enough to attract additional looks from the nearby staff. Before Penelope could respond, he thrust a cart stacked with neon yellow tennis balls toward her. The wheels squealed slightly as it halted abruptly at her feet. "Make yourself useful and sort these. Can't have those balls all over." His voice dripped with sarcasm and impatience, as if it were beneath him to engage with her any longer. With one last dismissive glance, he turned his back, already forgetting her presence. Penelope Grant held back a smile, allowing only the faintest upward curve at the corners of her mouth. "Right away," she responded gently, masking the glint of bemusement in her eyes. Without a second glance at the cart and its inventory of tennis balls, she slipped past Damon and headed towards the main administrative office of the academy. Her steps were brisk and purposeful, the air was alive with tension, and fellow coaches muttering at the brazenness of Damon's remark fell silent as she walked by. Navigating through the maze of record-perfect courts, Penelope reached a series of floor-to-ceiling glass doors that led into the central administrative building, which stood in sharp contrast to the busy courts outside. The quiet here was reflective and professional. The receptionist at the front desk glanced up, momentarily surprised at her appearance, then nodded politely, having already been briefed about the significant new appointment. She approached Olivia, the Academy's Human Resources Director, an elegant woman with an approachable demeanor and a warm smile that seemed to fill the room. Olivia welcomed Penelope with open arms as though greeting an old friend. "Penelope, we've all been eagerly awaiting your arrival. I hope everything went smoothly this morning." "Yes, thank you, Olivia," replied Penelope, her voice calm and assured, but laced with a hint of excitement at the new opportunity. "I had a productive early session on the court before coming here, hence the attire." Olivia smiled knowingly. "I understand. That's one of the reasons they picked you, always leading by example." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of several other senior staff members, each extending a hand to greet the new head coach warmly. They chatted briefly in the sunlight streaming into the room, amidst laughter and light-hearted banter that instantly warmed Penelope to her new colleagues. As Penelope settled in, details of her new role were confirmed. She'd been appointed as the strategic head of the Academy's coaching department, an ambitious move by the board to enhance the Academy's reputation and results. Meanwhile, back by the courts, Damon lingered with a group of assistant coaches, engaging in a running commentary about the new girl. He exaggerated his perspective on Penelope's apparent lack of professionalism, crowing about how he'd set her right, strictly interpreting her silence as compliance to his directives. His bravado inflated like a balloon, buoyed by nodding agreement from a couple of chuckling colleagues who hadn't yet witnessed the truth of her role. Inside the meeting room, Penelope found herself surrounded by people genuinely interested and invested in her vision for the academy. There was a palpable sense of anticipation, the atmosphere brimming with the eagerness of promises about to unfold. Her focus was on developing a collaborative environment where talent could flourish, a plan that required leadership but also cooperation. After a series of discussions to set the immediate priorities and strategies, Olivia prepared to pull the gathered coaching staff and key players for an official introduction on the main court. "It's time," she said, nodding to Penelope, who adjusted the strap of her gym bag still slung casually over her shoulder. Damon was still preoccupied with his boastful diatribe when the academy microphone echoed across the courts, calling everyone to gather on center court for an important announcement. The assembly, a mix of curiosity and routine, trickled onto the court where spotlights shifted to form a perimeter that commanded attention toward the center stage area. Penelope made her way to the court with Olivia and a few senior coaches by her side. Her demeanor was serene and yet filled with an indomitable energy reserved for those about to embark on transformative journeys. Spectators, including parents watching from the stands, turned from conversation hushed in collective inquiry, eyes locked on the unfamiliar face beside their much-respected HR leader. Penelope's appearance, unapologetically informal, intrigued further whispers among the onlookers. Olivia stepped forward. Her voice resonated through the sound system as she began, "Ladies and gentlemen, team members, esteemed staff and spectators, thank you for your attention today. It's my pleasure to introduce you to someone who will be pivotal to our tennis academy's future endeavors." As Penelope stood poised, observing the attentive faces, she noticed Damon hanging on the fringe, casual yet tense, his expression shifting from arrogant confidence toward incredulity, his unguarded jaw slightly dropping. Olivia continued, detailing Penelope's credentials with clear admiration. "Penelope Grant, former national tennis champion, has previously captained and coached collegiate teams to incredible success, earning accolades not just for victories but for inspiring and elevating players beyond their expectations." Gasps echoed softly through the assembly, and Damon's complexion paled visibly amidst the sudden silence that grew louder than his prior boasts. Still, Penelope watched without a trace of reproach, her eyes sharp and engaged. Olivia smiled broadly, pulling the assembly's awe back to her. "We're thrilled to welcome Penelope as our new head coach and leader in our journey to becoming a premier global academy." The applause began tentatively, then swelled to jubilant participation as the truth of Penelope's emergence took hold. Damon's shock was yet to dissipate, his mortification sinking in as assumptions and realities collided with an unmistakable force. Penelope nodded appreciatively, stepping up to the podium, yet she spoke with a humility and control that further cemented her unexpected yet immediate respect across staff and students alike. Damon retreated slightly, lost amid the shifting tides, realizing that his own unwitting initiation into becoming her first coaching challenge had just begun. The truth was, Penelope understood the value of coming in quietly, observing the environment before the official start. She would let her actions ripple, not just with authority but with repercussion wise enough to teach even the most entrenched of players and coaches. Her first day was not simply arrival, it was the makings of legacy, observed openly, where even opponents would learn that respect was earned with strokes played both in sport and in grace. The inner workings of the academy hummed with a new rhythm as the staff and players alike filed into their respective positions on the main court, the anticipation hanging thickly in the crisp morning air. It was a scene of orchestrated movement, like pieces on a chessboard waiting for the game to unfold. Damon, trying to regain some semblance of composure, shuffled towards the back, attempting to blend into his surroundings as the announcement began to sink in among his peers. His earlier illusions of grandeur now felt like a burning weight around his neck. Whispers flittered around him, fragments of disbelief and echoes of Penelope's impressive credentials forming a chorus of surprise and curiosity. The academy's staff encircled the court's perimeter with players lined in front, eagerly anticipating the chance to meet the woman who was rumored to transform the very essence of their training. Floodlights cast warm hues over the center court, where Olivia and Penelope stood at the podium, the latter exuding a quiet confidence that commanded attention. Olivia spoke first, guiding the session with practiced grace. She reintroduced Penelope to the academy, highlighting once more her former roles and pinnacles of achievement, staking her claim as the transformative figurehead at the helm of their beloved institution. Today, Olivia declared, marks the beginning of an exciting chapter for us here at the academy, led by a person whose vision extends not just to excellence in practice, but in principle. The assembly nodded as murmured consent rippled through the gathering. Damon, while attempting to shrink into anonymity, felt this ripple like an irritating itch beneath the surface of his skin. With Olivia's hand motioning towards her, Penelope took a measured step forward, her smile a reassuring beacon amidst the formalities. The environment she'd entered was no stranger to rigid hierarchies and unspoken rules, yet Penelope possessed the uncanny ability to unravel such codes with authenticity and drive, tools more powerful than any conventional rank. "Thank you, Olivia, for this warm welcome," Penelope began, her voice steady, brimming with the kind of quiet authority that needs no amplification. "To all the staff and players, thank you for gathering here today. As has been shared, my name is Penelope Grant, and I am honored to join this academy as your new head coach." Her gaze traversed the attentive faces, catching Damon's bewildered eyes trying to avert hers unsuccessfully. "Change," she continued, "is an inevitable part of growth, a belief I hold in both tennis and life. I am here not to overhaul, but to nurture what you do best, to strive for improvement in every dimension of our endeavors." The crowd hung on to her words, the eloquence in her delivery amplifying trust, peeling away skepticism layer by layer. "What I seek is a commitment to an identity we craft together, relying on mutual respect and unflinching enthusiasm for the sport we love." Penelope's tone carried optimism that resonated with inspiration, as if paving a path with words alone. And there it was, a discernible softening among the assembly, apprehension turning into expectancy. As many regarded Penelope, assured by the solid foundation of her past, Damon too was drawn into this wave of collective acceptance, a bitter realization that he might have underestimated her quite spectacularly. Penelope gestured subtly toward the courts, her vision tangible and vast. "This arena, with its lines and boundaries, is more than a playground, it's a platform for dreams. I remember the days of dreams started here," she spoke, layering a hint of nostalgia over her words that felt personal, though larger than herself. "But ambition drives us to be more than we were yesterday." Recognition blossomed through the assembly, coaches and players flickered with newfound hope and collective ambition, an investment in Penelope's goals relighting their aspirations buried by the mundane grind of their routine. Damon, still in the shadows of the crowd, wrestled with conflicting emotions, pride in the academy he served and resentment towards the new hierarchy established beyond his control. But as Penelope expertly redefined rank and objective, he found himself contemplating his previous behavior. The reality of his initial disrespect contrasted starkly with the true potential standing before him. Penelope's ability to captivate pushed him unknowingly to self-reflection. The atmosphere on the court evolved, a lightness taking seat where prior rigidities awaited. Conversations swelled into excited hubs of ideas, planning sessions as palpable as any athlete's regimen, the day morphing into an archipelago of possibilities. Having established a promising stage, Penelope descended into the gathered staff and players, her words mere precursors to the actions she planned to execute. Today wasn't solely her formal introduction, but an invitation to share and shape the future collectively. Drifting among them, she absorbed questions, attentively listened to concerns, and shared anecdotes that began to anchor her story within the confines of the academy walls. With every exchange, Damon, occupying his corner, was inexorably drawn in, the boundaries he'd built around his rogue persona starting to fracture. As the meeting wrapped up, leaving a charged silence pregnant with potential echoes of improvement, one sentiment lingered: hope. It clung as resolutely as the afternoon sun marking changing shadows on the courts. A wave let loose its tide, reshaping, reimagining what lay ahead not just for Penelope, but for Damon, whose earlier convictions dissipated, inviting humility and what might be a fresh slate, if only he would allow it. And so, Penelope had subtly but surely put herself at center court, not merely to command it, but to reframe its direction within the realm she now proudly, and rightly, stood to lead. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, casting its golden sheen across the courts, Penelope found herself inundated with genuine conversations. Her initial presentation had been met not with skepticism but with the kind of openness that indicated readiness for change, and she intended to seize that opportunity. She moved gracefully among the mix of coaches and players, each interaction fleshing out the ethos she wanted to instill. Here was a woman who was unperturbed by the opinions of those who relied on first impressions. Instead, she carved out respect with competence and charm, building bridges steadily. On the fringes, Damon watched, feeling like an outsider in his own domain. He saw players, some of whom he had personally coached, approach Penelope with inquiries, smiles, and in many cases, hidden admiration. There was an invisible barrier keeping him from stepping forward, pride intermingled with shame. As Penelope engaged with the staff, Olivia took a moment to address the pivotal figures within the academy, helping distill Penelope's experience into something more relatable, something actionable. Penelope's track record speaks for itself. She's not only a former champion but has successfully coached multiple teams to victory. Moreover, her emphasis on empathy and team coherence has transformed many athletes into remarkable sportsmen and sportswomen both on and off the court. The message was recalibrated to resonate with the team. Her arrival wasn't simply about new leadership, it was about collaboration and the possibility of surpassing previous heights. Olivia's words were an endorsement that empowered Penelope, further solidifying her authority. Penelope then turned her attention to the group directly, injecting practicality into vision. She expressed a desire to not only cultivate champions but to support players in their academic pursuits, community engagements, and holistic personal growth. When I was initially considered for this role, Penelope shared, I knew my first goal would be transparency. Understanding begins with seeing and then acting with intent. Which is why, she explained, pointing to her attire, I intentionally chose to arrive as I did today. It wasn't merely convenience from working out, it was to see our community in its unfiltered moments, to understand the core before influencing it. Her candidness drew appreciative nods from those whose own initial judgments had since shifted substantially. Her approach was as much about visibility as it was about connecting on a human level, an aspect sometimes overshadowed by the pressure of performance in elite sports environments. Her backstory of tirelessly working through adversity to become a national champion, then leveraging her insights to nurture talent across different cultures and countries, revealed a rich tapestry of experience. These were blessings she intended to pay forward to the budding players before her. The crowd listened intently. Penelope's journey resonated beyond her considerable tennis skills, it embedded values and a roadmap from struggle to accomplishment. In her narratives, Penelope relayed stories of victories hard-won not just on the courts but in the development of character, a core part of what she envisioned for the academy. Pause for a moment, she glanced around at familiarizing her surroundings, the whisper of the courts, the precisely demarked lines, the lingering aromas of courtside flora, her future landscape as much as it was theirs. Then she delivered her expectations. We start tomorrow, she said with a structured precision that was hard to ignore. Training sheets are posted online and adjustments follow our first assessments. We'll focus not only on honing your skills but embracing the sports spirit, honesty, respect, perseverance. Acknowledging both the tangible and intangible aspects of the sports life they led, Penelope encapsulated her strategy with guidance that bolstered her outline. The simplicity with which she articulated conviction indicated her belief that real leadership often eschewed pomp and relied generously on purpose. As hyped discussions broke out following her instruction, the energy and response Penelope had hoped for were clearly manifesting among her audience. But amid this folding magnetism of acceptance, she couldn't help but notice Damon, distant, shadowed by previous misconceptions now illuminated in the light of awareness. Later that afternoon, Penelope chose to confront Damon's shadowed silhouette by the courts. Candid curiosity led her to discover what lay beneath the alleged initial animosity she had faced. "Damon, can we talk?" she called out as she approached, the request cushioned with understanding and devoid of accusation. Damon, caught somewhat off guard, gestured in affirmation. They strolled alongside the boundaries of the courts, half empty now as afternoon lapsed, their conversation seasoned by a mutual need to resolve. "Seems I had the wrong impression earlier," Damon admitted, breaking the ice with a tone edged more by self-deprecation than complaint. "First impressions can be deceptive," Penelope replied with a knowing smile. "We live, we learn." His discomfort thawed under her courtesy. "I've stood by these courts for years," he admitted. "Sometimes, change is the hardest thing to reckon with." "Understandable," Penelope acknowledged, her voice gentle, stabilizing. "But growth doesn't occur in the familiar. It thrives in the unknown where risk becomes opportunity." She let the silence breathe thoughts into their dialogue, letting Damon absorb the potential embedded in her rhetoric. As shadows lengthened, the truth of their shared objective settled upon Damon, one of the Academy's more stubborn players who slowly found his foothold amid a culturing storm. Penelope's guidance appeared from angles least anticipated, delivering autonomy rather than dictation. In the significance of that exchange, Damon recognized the broader scope of her intent, opening himself slowly to a partnership he had never foresaw but might now cautiously welcome. At that moment, Damon experienced vulnerability but also the empowerment that came with aligning oneself to greatness given the chance. A silent understanding, shared in an unexpected glance, sealed a promise to leave hostility behind, moving forward as colleagues rather than adversaries on Penelope's renewed ground. The following morning dawned with the soft pastel hues of early sunlight stretching across the Academy courts, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch under Penelope's stride as she walked toward her new office. The atmosphere glittered with the promise of fresh beginnings, a symphony of rackets faintly audible as warm-ups began anew for the Academy's morning training. Penelope had risen early, as was her custom, to breathe in the quietude before life on the courts erupted into its usual cascade of activity. Today, though, felt different, tinged with the residual impact of yesterday's introductions and the anticipation of her formal command. As players began their routines, Penelope circulated among them, her expressions of encouragement as freely given as they were genuine. She stopped occasionally to offer advice, drawing from a wealth of experience that now spilled generously into her new role. Her reputation, now firmly established, commanded a silent empowerment throughout the training grounds. Meanwhile, in the administrative wing of the Academy, Damon stood before Olivia's office door, summoned to discuss his actions. His heart pounded a staccato rhythm, an echo of his uncertainty compounded by the weight of the previous day's revelations. "Damon," Olivia greeted him, gesturing for him to sit. Her demeanor remained professional, but carried an undercurrent of understanding. "We need to address what transpired yesterday." He nodded, bracing himself. "Of course. She's here to lead," Olivia began, her voice gentle yet firm. "The Academy's reputation relies on harmony and respect, values that need abiding by everyone." Damon might have bristled at being lectured under other circumstances, but recognition of his misstep had settled. "It was a mistake. I underestimated her, and I see that clearly now. We appreciate your acknowledgement, and Penelope has extended her forgiveness, more than some would, given the circumstances. But you must also take proactive steps to rebuild and respect her leadership," Olivia stated, emphasizing accountability over perfunctory apologies. "I want to prove it," he replied humbly, an earnestness in his gaze. "I realized that fighting change would mean losing an opportunity to learn from someone remarkable." Olivia leaned back, satisfied. "Fine. There will be coaching review meetings, and I expect you to participate actively. Share your experience but also be open to Penelope's strategies." "Can I rely on you?" Damon agreed. It was a start, and in that commitment lay a seed of redemption, a chance to contribute through genuine collaboration he hadn't previously considered. As Olivia's door closed behind him, Damon felt a strange mix of relief and anticipation. His steps toward the courts felt lighter, tinged with a burgeoning determination to transform what had been a collision into a harmonious integration. Gone was the arrogance that had isolated him. Perhaps now there was space for authentic involvement. Back on the courts, a new energy crackled visibly amid the players. The usual rituals of drills and exercises resumed under Penelope's discerning eye, foundation building not just on technical excellence but on the unity she aspired to cultivate. Penelope's leadership style quickly established itself as a beacon, infusing the academy with purpose. Her expectations were high, but equally tempered with fairness and the flexibility only experienced mentors could furnish. Coaching sessions became interactive learning experiences, her feedback overwhelmingly constructive, laced with personal anecdotes and stories of competitive glory and misguided endeavors. Among those approaching her post-session was Damon, offering counsel as specific questions arose. His demeanor humble, his intent potent, a noticeable shift from his initial bluster, now replaced with a resolve to adapt and support. His cautious entrance into her circle wasn't met with the skepticism he feared. In fact, Penelope welcomed his experience and insights, facilitating discussions that appealed to his understanding while challenging preconceived notions with fresh perspectives. Remember, Penelope would often remind him and others, tennis isn't merely a sport. It's about the enduring spirit of learning, the rebound after setbacks, and the willingness to face difference head-on for the sake of mastery. Outside of set training hours, Penelope could often be found on court herself, sparring with players, showing not only her own skill set but also highlighting areas of needed growth, transforming the very fabric of competition into camaraderie. Players responded with enthusiasm reflective of her example. Players who were once merely competitors now embraced collaboration that transcended individual gain, uniting towards a common vision that promised both excellence and integrity. As days stretched into weeks, moments of camaraderie, laughter, and occasionally cathartic frustration threaded through training. Damon's growing ease within Penelope's transformative environment, now augmented by an allegiance shared over collective challenges, became undeniable. Under Penelope's leadership, changes were forthcoming, game strategies became more dynamic, individual performance metrics soared, and more importantly, there was an unmistakable bond knitting the academy into a tapestry of shared achievement. In their respective corners, Damon and Penelope found mutual respect, a silent nod here, an exchange of strategies there. Where there was once skepticism and division, gratitude and understanding now flourished. By week's end, amidst the hustle of another competitive season unfolding, Penelope stood by the courts she had embraced as her own. Her gaze encompassed the academy's expanse, renovated by not only compliance but an infusion of renewed spirit and commitment. Having capped training with a succinct group discussion, she watched as players departed for the day, their passion ignited under the tempered glow of setting sun. Damon paused at the court's exit, catching Penelope's eye. A brief moment held them in a shared understanding. What had begun with discord now concluded with a burgeoning camaraderie neither had anticipated. As footsteps quieted and dusk descended, Penelope surveyed her new domain with curiosity and pride. Here was a place transformed not merely by her leadership, but by the hearts and minds committed to evolving alongside her. With each confident stride down the corridors, each familiar face nodded in acknowledgement of the new head coach. Penelope Grant had not only taken center court, she had also redefined its very vantage point, a steward of vision, determined to lead, to inspire, and to shape the future, firmly anchored in command.